Are you telling me that the government is about to be shut down again? Because the two parties can't agree on a spending bill that would not include another stimulus check? Fucking no! Just no! Both Biden and Trump want another stimulus check. Trump wants it for his ego, so let's give it to him. Distribute a Trump-signed certificate with each check for all I fucking care. People are starving. We have breadlines and Hoovervilles, and it's not even making the headlines anymore. I don't want to hear a goddamn thing out of our government until they pay us some of our tax money back when we need it the most. Legal liability, financial incentives for schools to reopen, funding for vaccine distribution for a vaccine that we can't even distribute yet? All that shit can be tabled until after the holidays, but the people need money now. If there isn't a stimulus check passed by Thursday's deadline, we are going to spend our Christmas going to each one of your houses and peacefully protesting our asses off. We won't let you sleep. We won't let you eat in peace. We won't let you enjoy a vacation while the rest of us starve. And guess what? We're no longer happy with $1,200, a one-time shot. Now we want $2,000 a month for every month that we were affected by COVID, retroactively. You can afford it. We know you can afford it because you have been and still are considering giving more money to the oil companies, to Amazon, and to big business. So let me millennial-splain a little something to you for a second. That there is called trickle-down economics. It has been proven to fail for the last 50 years. And along with that pittance that you're trickling down to the rest of us, you are trickling down neglect. You are trickling down the message that you don't care whether we live or die. Well, guess what? When you trickle down far enough, the only place left to go is up. Moreover, we need to see the Progressive Caucus stand up for us. We, the public, your base. We need to have faith that when we cry out for something, you'll hear it. Even if you can't deliver right away, we need to know that you feel that you are actually working for us, that you are really representing us, right or wrong. Because if it's we, the people, who are supposed to be deciding what you do every day, then you, Progressive Caucus, need to prove to us that you are taking your directions not from corporations, senior government officials, but from us, the public. Now more than ever, we need to believe in our government. And guess what? Most of us don't. And it's not just because of Trump. You know it's not just because of Trump, because most of you ran on the premise that the public was not being heard. We weren't then, and we're not again. $600 is not enough, and those in power know it. No one who has been struggling during these hard times needs explained to them why $600 is not enough. It just isn't. My rent alone is $1,000. $600 might cover my Christmas shopping, gee thanks. But what good are presents if you have to put them under a tree near your tent camp in Central Park? And in case you think I'm being dramatic about that, know that every major city in this country now hosts at least one Hooverville, homeless camp, or as it's now known, tent city. Also know that these haven't just popped up due to coronavirus, but many have been in place since the 2008 crash. The corporate news has been sweeping them under the rug as best they can, which makes me utterly sick. We have entire musicals dedicated to the Hoovervilles of the 1930s, but for the past 12 years, we've been afraid to call our problems anything but more than an economic downturn. We have been gaslit by Wall Street this entire time, and it's only now that some of the comfortable are cottoning on to it. So, let me millennial-splain why. Because millennials have been experiencing the brunt of this depression gaslighting. Did you know that our generation has done financially worse than every older generation every year since 2008? Did you know that at the height of the depression in 2010, millennials experienced a 25% unemployment rate, the same rate as it was during the depression of the 1930s? No. Most millennials don't even know that, because boomer media was more interested in blaming us for our poverty than acknowledging the situation. So trust me when I tell you that we know what it feels like to be gassed. So now, let's tie all this bitching back into the stimulus at hand. Because the question of the day isn't, why did we only get $600? The question really is, why do our leaders consistently give us as little as they possibly can get away with? This is a philosophy employed by business leaders and should only make sense in that context. Our representatives don't get more money for themselves if less money goes directly to the people. So why should they waste their own vacation time haggling over the size of the check when it's our tax money to begin with? On the one hand, they know they can't get away with giving us nothing. There would be public outcry. On the other hand, most politicians are funded by large corporate donors who will directly benefit from funding that does not go to the people. So, when politicians are negotiating what money goes where for the stimulus, they are negotiating between appeasing us and giving their corporate donors as much of our tax money as they can without causing public outcry. But they know as long as they give us something, as long as they make excuses and string us along, we won't cry out. Because they are very good at conditioning us to get less and less each time. And we all say, well, what do we expect? That's how it is. We don't get money for free. Meanwhile, our tax money piles up in their corporate accounts faster than we've ever seen before. So this is why it doesn't matter whether they give us $1,200 or $600. Because each time they give us money, they're going to make it look like they're fighting harder and harder to be able to give us any money at all. And at the end of the day, we are going to get conditions to receive nothing, and the companies to receive everything. Ossoff and Warnock have won in Georgia, so congrats. And I just want to take this moment to thank black voters, because in this election and in every election in which we've gotten a narrow escape from doom, we can thank black voters, and I am happy to do that. I know that there has been a lot of organization, a lot of activism in Georgia around this. I know that there was crazy stories of voter suppression coming out of Georgia. I heard one story on TikTok in which black women who voted in the presidential election suddenly had their voter registration wiped, that they had to re-register in order to vote in this runoff. And that is just unacceptable. That is voter suppression. Textbook. Disgusting. Anyway, I just want to take a moment to thank Benjamin Dixon, Mondale Robinson, Marcus Farrell, and all of the members of the clickbaity political thirst trap, or whatever they call their morning podcast. They have been a voice for truth in this election. I want to thank Really American for raising $100,000 to fund ride shares to the polls for this election as well. I also want to bring up something that Marcus Farrell said on that podcast this morning, and I want to address my force the vote brethren on this. I won't say brethren, I'll say mishbucha on this. In this force the vote conversation, we have not highlighted Medicare for All activists that have been fighting for this for a long time. We have not highlighted the fact that Medicare for All is meaningless unless the infrastructure for healthcare to be provided to every citizen exists. Is this addressed in current Medicare for All policy? Are we going to be focusing on building hospitals? Are we going to focus on funding ambulance rides? What are we going to do to help the people that are too poor to get to the health care. Our concern should not just be about affording the health care, but also getting to the health care and getting to competent health care. We need to make sure that everyone can access competent health care within a reasonable distance. I may not yet have the biggest platform, but I will happily use what I got to bring attention to this concern. It's absolutely important that as leftists, we make sure to include this in our conversation, and I think it's necessary to. Yesterday scared the shit out of me. I'm a Jewish lesbian, engaged to a black one. I'm watching videos of these assholes giving high fives to Capitol Police, and I'm picturing scenes from V for Vendetta. If police and people at the fucking Pentagon are clearly encouraging this, then how long will it be until parties of alt-right armed guys show up at my apartment, shove us in a van, and ship us off to some godforsaken concentration camp? They're already practicing on immigrants. They've got the infrastructure. I deal with PTSD and anxiety attacks, if you couldn't tell. Dealing with one while you're singing Disney songs to your special needs patients is, however, what I get paid the not-so-big bucks for. That is what I was doing while I discovered what was happening at the Capitol yesterday. On my way home from work that day, I cursed these terrorist assholes. I raged and hated and imagined that this was the beginning of the Civil War. But when I got home and I saw my beautiful fiancé was of course fine, I rolled a joint, and then we ate the same McDonald's dinners that many of those terrorists were probably eating. This morning I listened to accounts from independent journalists of the insurrection. Dan Cohen described a conversation with one of the MAGA supporters who had witnessed the now deceased unarmed woman being shot several times by a Capitol cop on the Katie Halper show last night. The MAGA supporter sounded like a BLM protester who had witnessed police killings this summer. A part of me thought, well, now your side gets a taste of your own medicine, albeit a very small taste in comparison. But then Cohen reported that this witness's main reason for joining this insurrection was the lack of a $2,000 stimulus check. Wow, that's the very same issue I have been protesting for months. Then I remembered that I had seen a video of some of these insurrectionists climbing up to get to Mitch McConnell's office. Then part of me thought, what would happen if leftists came out to join this protest and we all called for stimulus checks? Don't get me wrong, I'm not enough of a hippie to think that there's any chance that marginalized people could join hands with white supremacists and sing Kumbaya, nor would I want that without a serious reckoning. But what if, after all this time of trying to divide us for his own gain, Trump finally hit on the one thing that might unite us? Because here's the real deal. Both Dems and Republicans are owned by large corporations, and I am nowhere near the first person to point this out. Ryan Knight, for example, describes this situation much more eloquently than I. Both parties take donations from private industries equally. Neither party has been able to deliver actual help to the people. It doesn't surprise me at all that there are MAGA supporters who rebel for some of the same reasons that leftists do. Wasn't Donny Boy going to drain the swamp? And what happened when we impeached him at the ballot box, Nance? We got a different white grandpa who's planning to bring in even more swamp. I am so fed up with this system. We need a People's Party desperately. An ode to Bernie Sanders. In a world of grandparents that are all fighting each other over how little put in our checks and our Christmas cards this year, Bernie Sanders is the one grandpa that's actually standing up for the rest of us. Bernie Sanders has been fighting for us for years, and this year in particular, he has kicked ass. And he has only been short-sheeted by the corporate Democrats. So, at the closing of this year, I want to celebrate him, as he is Millennial-splaining's very first official grandpa of the year. He's willing to keep senators there until New Year's Day just to fight for a $2,000 stimulus check. We have to support him. The last time I've seen a grandpa who didn't work at Walmart work that hard was when Rudy Giuliani tried to justify why his hair was running down his face. If you are already treating your employment as if it were your retirement, then you shouldn't be in office. End of conversation. Let's millennials-plain the Bernie's Mittens meme for a minute. To millennials, it's no surprise that Bernie's Mittens were trending number one over the actual inauguration. Why? Because Bernie Sanders is way more popular with us. In fact, way more popular with the country, I think, than Joe Biden himself. How do I know that? Listen to this viral TikTok that came out during the time of the primaries.
Democrats, please don't make me vote for Joe Biden. Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden. Please don't make me vote for Joe Biden. I don't want to vote for Joe Biden.
That pretty much sums up our passionate hatred of Joe Biden. He represents the old economy. He represents people who don't understand or have any sympathy for the fact that millennials have been and still are in a serious depression. When we own 5% of this nation's wealth compared to older generations that Xers own 25% and boomers own 55% of this nation's wealth, then you need to ask yourselves, when millennials are turning 35 and almost 40, and we only own 5% of this nation's wealth, why we are joking about guillotines, then you need to understand why going back to some kind of normal is not going to cut it for us. We never had a prosperous normal. We graduated into a depression. It was not a recession for us. Our unemployment rate was 25%. The same exact unemployment rate as it was in the Great Depression. And our unemployment rate has been trailing epically behind those of older generations ever since then. Yeah, so for a man who spent $200 million on his own housewarming party, while the rest of us are starving, while the rest of us are sleeping on our parents' couches, while the rest of us are living in tent cities in every major city in this country. No, we are not interested, Joe Biden. We are way more interested in Bernie's Mittens. That image of Bernie was the most perfect expression of how exasperated my generation is with the pomp and circumstance of yours. I don't care about Lady Gaga and her giant bird. I don't care about J-Lo and her beautiful voice. I don't want you spending millions of dollars on fireworks and flags while I'm still waiting for you to send me a not $2,000 check. What is it now? $1,400? Because $2,000 is too much? What, are we gonna spend it in the wrong place, Grandpa? Buy too much frickin' bubble gum? Oh my God. Phrases like "okay boomer" and Bernie's Mittens, they are what we have to say when there is too much to say. There is too much to say and we know you're not listening. That's why Bernie's Mittens is trending. Because we know you're not listening. We're sitting there cross-armed, pissed off at you because you won't listen to us. And you're expecting us to clap for you when you put on a song and dance? Absolutely not. The more that you engender that level of frustration, the more you will make yourselves irrelevant, especially as you are aging out of relevancy to begin with, Mr. 78 years old and a brand new president. Bernie, we love you. You are an honorary millennial, 3,000,000%. Your exasperation at the day of inauguration echoes our own, and we love you for showing up and voicing it for us. And speaking of millennials only owning 5% of this nation's wealth, I, like so many in my other generations, am trying to catch up on rent. I'm actually behind a month, and I would really appreciate it if you could go on to Redbubble, link provided below, and take a look at my Bernie's Mittens designs. Even just leave a like or share with your friends would be truly appreciated. Thank you so much.
I'm running because last year I was offered Coronavirus CARES Act funds to drop out of the election as Narcan. I don't think public health funding should be dependent on me rigging elections for the Democratic Party. I know that these backroom deals are consistent and persistent within the Democratic Party, and it's truly problematic and leads to bad policies.